It's 2024, and the world is in dire need of a new Roadhouse movie, apparently. Enter Amazon Studios, who are the current owners of the IP after acquiring MGM back in 2022. In a movie landscape filled with failed reboots, reinventions, and reimaginings, Amazon proudly declared, "We can do that too." So off they went to tackle another beloved 1980s cult classic to the ground and try to regurgitate it for modern audiences. Ugh. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Elwood Dalton, an MMA fighter. However, he's not just any MMA fighter, but a UFC fighter. See, you gotta get the brand advertising there. It's crucial to the story. Anyway, after events beyond his control forces him out of competing in the UFC, Dalton travels the country looking for underground fights to make ends meet. This is where Roadhouse owner Frankie finds Dalton. See, she's in dire need of help in managing the chaos at her roadhouse from unsavory thugs and violent patrons, which by the way is now located in the Florida Keys. She makes Dalton an offer he can't refuse, and we're off to the races. So, where to begin? The movie opens in a warehouse of American rapper Post Malone, playing a warehouse brawler. I know. Anyway, after what's equal parts slick camera work and equal parts awkward CGI enhanced fight scene, Post Malone predictably wins against his opponent because, he's Post Malone. He's now ready for the next challenger. In comes Jake Gyllenhaal's Elwood Dalton, whom after an extended introduction sequence shown as a hooded figure gliding through the crowd, removes his top to reveal his perfectly chiseled godly pecs and abs. But we're not worthy to see those mighty manly bosoms in action quite just yet, for we're in for a subversion of sorts. You see, Post Malone recognizes Dalton and his killer reputation and refuses to fight him, so no fight scene for you, peasants. Look, I'll just say it. This movie is outrageously over the top, with characters getting stabbed and walking away like it was Tuesday. It basically follows the formula of the original and pretty much every other movie in which one man arrives in town and decides he needs to help the townsfolk get rid of the local crime balls type of story. All well and good. Or is it? The biggest problem I have with Roadhouse 2024 is that it is just so lazy. The screenplay really is quite extraordinarily laughable, and not in a good way, unfortunately. Quite early on, we have a self-deletion scene which serves no purpose other than to give Dalton a reason to go Frankie, the Roadhouse owner, and accept her job offer. It's like the writers couldn't think up anything more interesting than a self-deletion in which predictably Beefcake Jake escapes after a change of heart. See, he escapes meeting his maker at the last second, but not before subjecting us, the audience, to a really fake-looking CGI train crash. Ugh. Now, look, plenty of characters have been stabbed in movies, only to simply walk it off. But for a movie which is trying to establish itself as taking place in a somewhat gritty, albeit very stylized reality, it just comes across as silly and just lazy, like the writers wanted Beefcake Jake to get stabbed early on but didn't actually want to deal with any of the consequences of the injury as the movie progressed. That is, until, of course, it does. The cinematography in this movie is fine. One could argue that it should be spectacular given the setting and the locations, but it's fine, nothing special. There's an ever-present blue filter, which kinda makes everything just look so cold and flat, like we're in the Florida Keys. Where is the warmth and vibrancy here? After traveling to the Keys, Jake stops by the local bookstore for a scene that is so awkwardly staged, with dialogue so phoned in that it really begged the question, did actual human beings write this? And then there's this piece of cinematic gold.
Get a black coffee.
Oh, yeah, we don't have that. Sorry.
What are you drinking?
It's Cuban coffee. Very different.
Now, for all of you coffee connoisseurs out there, yes, there is a difference between black coffee and Cuban coffee, but this scene is just, Why not have the bartender simply respond with, "Sorry, we only serve Cuban coffee," and then maybe have the bartender attempt to explain to Dalton, and thus the audience, what the difference is, because I guarantee a vast majority of the audience at home were like, what's the difference? I mean, come on, you're a bartender. You're supposed to be approachable, not be an elitist twat about coffee. Still, give credit where credit is due, I suppose. We do get an awkward payoff of Dalton tasting the coffee and reacting.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Doesn't change the fact that the whole scene just comes off as clunky. Now, I realize I've been using this word a lot during this review. Awkward. But the movie truly is full of these awkward, slow, pause and go moments. Almost like they're trying to have these pauses for the audience to laugh. On Dalton's first night at the Roadhouse, the crime lord's thugs arrive and he proceeds to watch them intimidate patrons, commit property damage, and harass a female member of staff before he finally takes action. Like, bruh, you are getting paid $5,000 per week to stop this kind of bullshit. After Beefcake Jake decides he wants to take on all 5 thugs at once, he does without breaking so much as a sweat. And we, the audience, are supposed to forget about the freaking stab wound, which occurred, what, less than 24 hours ago? I mean, I guess the writers also forgot about that. He then decides to drive all the thugs to the hospital afterwards. This was unbelievably stupid on so many levels. Why would Dalton deliberately put himself into such a compromising position? If either one of those thugs attacked him right there and then, there really wouldn't have been much he would have been able to do to defend himself. I mean,
Fantastic writing.
quick note, we saw Dalton take out, 5 guys? Yet only drives 4 to the hospital. I mean, what the hell? Even if you make the argument that you can't see the 5th guy because he is somehow squeezed in behind Dalton in this shot, or maybe perhaps in the trunk, how do you explain this one? It's at this point in the movie where we're introduced to the obligatory love interest, and of course, with it being 2024, she's written to be a strong, independent, and empowered female, which is Hollywood speak for hostile, aggressive, and judgmental as fuck. I mean, just see for yourselves.
But that's not something you'd care about, being a rage-filled dickhead who likes to hurt people for fun.
Jesus! Jump to conclusions much? I mean, this is a member of the public you're talking to. Hardly professional behavior. So, the writers decide to remember the stab wound is actually a thing, and it becomes relevant to the plot again. Oh my. Little did we know, the whole reason for the stab wound would be to establish a relationship with empowered, judgmental, hostile Latina nurse. After Dalton finds out how the Roadhouse got its name,
It's a roadhouse, but it's called the Road House.
he scores himself a boathouse called Boathouse. Oh, I'm just kidding. It's simply called The Boat. Frankie offers to let Jake stay there after casually mentioning a crocodile living there.
Also, watch out for the crocodile.
Ooh, gee, I wonder if this is some kind of foreshadowing. More awkwardness ensues with shopkeeper Charlie. She compares Jake to being an intrepid like Wade Waco, destined to bring scoundrels to justice or some shit. Really on the nose comparison between him and the old Wild West. Is this the movie's attempt to be self-aware? Are the writers pointing out to the audience?
See? Just like the old westerns.
Oh, and Jake happens to run into the exact same thugs he dropped off at the hospital just a few hours prior. I cannot express how cliche and lazy this is, even as action movie tropes go. I mean, really, the writers couldn't think of anything more creative. Like maybe have Dalton followed instead? Oh, I know it's super generic, but it would have been a little bit more forgiving than just having him coincidentally run into his attackers from the night before. The movie later attempts at character development with Charlie, and we get more dull, generic details on her backstory. Problem is, the writers don't understand anything about what it's like to be human. Every character functions down to the barest essentials. Roadhouse boss, bartender, server, forced love interest, corrupt sheriff, main antagonist, supporting antagonist. There's not anything remotely interesting going on with any of these characters. Even Beefcake Jake himself is the typical hero with a dark, tragic past. It is so utterly basic cookie cutter bullshit! Speaking of the main antagonist, our grand introduction to him, Mr. B, is him sitting around in a dressing robe and Speedos. Oh boy, he sure oozes intimidation and superior intellect. No, I'm just kidding. He sits around in his private yacht, bitching and barking orders while getting a shave from his personal assistant. It is all so cartoonish that it borders on tedious. So, our hero, who is getting $5,000 per week to deal with the unreasonable, unruly patrons, casually tells one of the servers, Billy, that not only does one of the unreasonable patrons possess a knife, but he asks Billy to go deal with it, instead of devising a carefully smart and strategic distraction so Dalton could sneak up on the patron from behind and safely disarm him, reducing any risk of serious injury to anyone else. He simply tells him,
When he takes it out, step back and pop him in the face.
"Oh, excellent writing." We then get another scene with empowered, judgmental, hostile Latina nurse, once again demonstrating her compassion and positive social skills.
Fuck you, Frank. I should have let that burst appendix kill you.
You don't want to know me.
Don't tell me what I want.
The female empowerment is strong with this one.
In a climate where movies can no longer show leading men make the first move on a female in fears of upsetting the non-existent modern audience, and the fact that this is an Amazon Studios production, I guess this scene is as good as it gets. Fuck it, I'll just say it. The chemistry between these two make Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen look far more convincing in Attack of the Clowns.
I don't like sand.
See, I quite like Daniela Melchior, whatever, in other movies. For example, I liked her just fine in the pure cinematic masterpiece that is Fast and Furious 10, or better known in the high art film society circles as Fast X. I also liked her quite a bit in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, but she is so poorly written here with barely anything to do except instructed to look like she's about to lay an egg. Oh, I'm sure I'm gonna catch some flack for stating that, but sue me. Enter Conor McGregor. At the halfway mark, future Oscar winner Conor McGregor makes his appearance. He jumps out of a window naked and comically struts along like he is mentally challenged. Seriously, he struts along complete with badass music. The whole thing is so ridiculous it derails the movie into cringe-worthy levels of schlock. The reality is, most people who are going to watch this just want to see how Conor McGregor, a UFC fighter who hasn't fought in 3 years by the way, fares in his acting debut. Well, he is over the top, flamboyant, cartoony, and a bit of a charisma vacuum. Conor either believes he is giving the performance of a lifetime, or he really is the only one who knows exactly the type of movie he is making. And I haven't decided if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Other notable mentions, there's a ridiculous, subplot, if you can call it that, involving a corrupt sheriff who calls himself Big Dick. The writers simply wanted a character in the movie called Big Dick. Ooh, hilarious, right? Anyway, the whole subplot is resolved in such an outrageously lazy manner, you could almost feel the writers' smug grins as they wrote the scene high-fiving each other exclaiming, "It's an action movie, bruh, supposed to be dumb." Look, the original was no masterpiece, but it had charm and a certain intensity to the action scenes. The fight scenes were all generally well choreographed and shot, and didn't need the excesses of modern CGI to tie them together. He had a convincing cast that while no one in that movie was giving an Oscar-worthy performance, they were all believable within the context of the film. Roadhouse 2024 is a hollow, sterile, awkward, and kinda stilted movie without much charm, with dialogue that varies from weak, predictable, and at best barely serviceable to the story. The tone of the movie shifts constantly from semi-serious drama to awkward comedy to tongue-in-cheek wink at the audience schlock, especially during the Conor McGregor scenes. It never fully commits to a tone and comes off as kinda confused and dishonest. There's a mid-credit scene in which our notorious Conor McGregor is shown fine and dandy as he struts out of the hospital ready to take on future sequels and or spin-offs. Oh god, please know, this man is the last thing Hollywood needs, even if the man himself believes otherwise.
I actually can play loads of roles. Thinking about the movies I could do. Thinking about the movies that you could make around me.
Director Doug Liman has a pretty interesting body of work, ranging from genuine good action thrillers, action action comedies to fantastic blockbusters. This movie is sadly not one of them. In closing, I believe this is how the movie should have played out. I have to go now, somewhere out there in the void. Exorcism needs performing.
I do think that this movie really did try to recapture the feel of the original, and for the most part succeeded.